Before Ellis Island, before the great waves of European immigrants, the history of immigration in the United States began chaotically, with promises of wealth, colonization, and brutality. What does it mean to be an immigrant when the land you arrive in does not, in fact, belong to those who claim to govern it? Immigration has always been a fundamental part of the construction of the United States. However, not everyone who arrived was received as an equal. Today, we will explore the first waves of immigration to North America and understand how colonizers, indentured servants, and enslaved Africans shaped this territory. In the early 17th century, European explorers had already mapped and claimed territories that, in reality, had been inhabited by indigenous peoples for millennia. But for the colonizers, these lands represented a new beginning, the hope of wealth and freedom. In 1607, the English established the colony of Jamestown, the first permanent British colony in America. This colony survived thanks to the cultivation of tobacco, introduced by John Rolfe, which became the backbone of Virginia's economy. In 1620, the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth, fleeing religious persecution in England. Their famous Mayflower Compact established a system of self-government, one of the first democratic experiments in the American colonies. In 1624, the Dutch founded New Amsterdam, which later became New York, emerging as a hub of diversity early on, with populations from different parts of Europe and beyond. What drove these people to cross the Atlantic? Many fled famine, war, or persecution. Others sought land and opportunities they lacked in their home countries. However, life in the New World was far from easy. The Pilgrims believed they were creating a new society based on their faith. But they soon discovered that the winter was unforgiving and that survival depended on alliances with the natives, especially the Wampanoags, who taught them farming and fishing techniques. Indentured servants, like John Carter, saw America as a chance to escape poverty in Europe. He was only 16 when he signed an indentured servitude contract. In exchange for passage to the New World, he would work for years under a master. Many did not survive their term of servitude, enduring mistreatment and brutal conditions. By 1619, about half of Virginia's white population were indentured servants. And then, there were the enslaved Africans. Kofi was taken from his homeland in West Africa and forced onto a slave ship. In 1619, he and other Africans arrived in Jamestown, marking the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade in the British colonies. For him, there was no contract or promise of freedom, only chains and the prospect of a lifetime of forced labor. The arrival of Europeans brought profound changes to the region. The first encounters with indigenous peoples resulted in both trade exchanges and violent conflicts, such as King Philip's War, 1695-1678, which devastated entire tribes and solidified European dominance in New England. The expansion of the colonies led to large-scale land exploitation and, with it, an increasing dependence on enslaved labor. In 1662, Virginia passed laws stating that the children of enslaved women would also be enslaved, cementing slavery as a permanent institution. Colonial immigration was just the first chapter of a much larger story. Over the next centuries, the New World would attract millions of immigrants, each with their own dreams and struggles to belong. In the next episode, we will see how immigration became one of the pillars of the United States Foundation, and how the first citizenship laws began to shape who was considered American and who was not.